today about how to calculate a GPA because I figured you might need some simple step-by-step directions in case you're a sleep-deprived parent, maybe with a baby on your hip, and sometimes having written instructions just doesn't make it easy enough for people, right? So let's figure out, how do you do a GPA? Because it matters. Your GPA, the grades that you give your child, actually makes a difference in terms of college applications, job applications, scholarship applications. So you really want to correctly figure out your GPA and make sure that your child looks, as best as they possibly can on the papers that you're submitting to these people that are going to determine their future, right? So let's think about the GPA. When you're calculating a GPA, you only include the classes with a final grade. So you're not calculating the GPA for classes that are currently in progress. And you don't include classes that haven't gotten their final grade yet if they're over summer or if you're in the middle of something. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lee Benz and I'm the HomeScholar, and I love helping parents homeschool through high school. I love taking things that seem complicated and make it simple for you. And that's why I want to give you simple instructions for calculating your homeschool GPA. So I wanted to start with the basics, okay? You have to have a grade for each class. Does not mean you have to have a test. You just need a grade. You have to have a credit value for each class, all right? Those are the foundational core ingredients that you need for a GPA. Okay, so here's the steps. Step one, you put in a numerical grade for your transcript. That means a 4.0 or a 3.0, not an A or a B, because you have to multiply a number by a number. Otherwise, you're talking algebra, and then it's way too hard, okay? The next thing that you do is you put a numerical credit value for each class. It's either one whole credit or a half a credit. The next thing you do is you multiply those two things. For each class, you multiply the grade times the credit. So for biology, it's a 4.0 times 1 credit, okay? And you come up with 4. So you do that for every single class that you do. And then the next thing you do is you have to make sure that each class is multiplied accurately. So if you have a 3.0 in biology, then 3.0 times 1 is 3, not 4. Okay, so you multiply each class. So you might be doing this, 23 different times. Okay. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add them all up. See, each one of those multiplied together is called the grade point. So each class has its own grade point. Biology has a grade point. Chemistry has a grade point. Algebra has a grade point. Then you add up all the grade points to find the average. Remember how when we were, doing our middle school math and we found the average of things, you add them all up and then you divide by, all right? So you're adding them all up, but here's where people get confused. You divide by the number of credits. You're not dividing by the number of classes, or that will mess things up. You divide things by the number of credits, okay? Now, you'll come up with a GPA, but sometimes people will do it wrong. I'm not going to say that I've ever done it wrong. I'm just going to say people are saying sometimes they do it wrong. And the solution is the same as the solution we had in elementary math, right? You do your mental math first. So if all of your child's grades are a 4.0, it is going to be a 4.0 GPA, right? You want to use your mental math. Or if you only have 1 or 2 B's or C's, it's going to be a pretty high GPA. So you want to kind of do your mental math first and make sure that you're checking the answer that you got compared to your mental math. So they didn't get a 6.0 GPA, for example, okay? And then the next thing I wanted to explain is that as you're thinking about your GPA, one of the questions that often comes up is, do I give more weight to some classes that are honors classes or dual enrollment classes. And that's a pretty complicated topic. So I like to explain it this way. If you don't know what weighted grades are, do me a favor, cover your ears and say, la, 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 I can't hear you, okay? Because I don't want you to weight grades, especially if you do have a baby on your hip and you're sleep deprived. Calculating a weighted grade can be, hard for people anyway. But if you do know what weighted grades are and you're wondering what my recommendation is, let me kind of explain it a little bit longer for you. You see, each high school across the entire nation will have a different policy on weighting grades. And some high schools will not weight grades. And other high schools will say, well, if it's an honors course, we'll add 1 to the grade. So instead of a 4.0 in the class, you can get a 5.0 in the class. Other school districts will say, no, for an honors class, you add 0.7 to the grade. 4.7 is a perfect grade. So you can see how if every school does it differently and they're adding crazy numbers like a whole, 1 whole, or 0.7 or 0.3 or 0.25 or 0.33 to these different classes, and everybody's doing it differently, it's very confusing to the person who is reading your weighted grades. Now, the reason why it happens is because schools are kind of competing against one another to see who has the smartest children. And obviously, we have the smartest children because our grade point is so much higher, without mentioning that they weight grades. But when a student is applying for college, they all have to be treated fairly, right? So what a college will often do is the very first thing they'll do is they will unweight grades. They may reweight them according to how they think it's important, like only math and science get weighted or something. But the first thing that they have to do is unweight grades. We are not like public or private schools that has to compete with anybody. We don't need to weight grades. And so, long story short, only weight grades if your college asks you to weight grades, all right? Only weight grades if it is required by your state. I think it might be required by South Carolina, but I'm not sure if that applies to homeschoolers. But otherwise, try to avoid it and make your life simple, right? Now, in review, your homeschool GPA really does matter. It all starts with having accurate grades and accurate credit values. But beyond that, it's really pretty simple math. And if you're super scared, I was super scared myself. And that was one of the reasons why I chose the grading scale for my children that I did, was because I was too scared to calculate GPA. And I figured if I use the 90 to 100% as my A, knowing I was a mean mom, I would force my children to always get an A in all of their classes, or they were darn well going to do it over again, right? And so that's how I got away with doing the GPA problem. And it wasn't until after I started being a consultant with other people that I recognized other people were just as scared of GPA as I was. So now I can do it, with both eyes closed and both hands tied behind my back. I can calculate that GPA. And I want you to feel comfortable doing that too. So I hope that that has helped you as you're thinking about calculating GPA. It can be a little scary, right? But there's nothing to be afraid of. It's really simple math. It's really elementary age math, okay? Now, if you need a cookie, I wish I could give you a cookie right now to take away all the stress. I know we talked about some really scary things, but I just wanted to remind you that you can give real grades to your children. Your grades are just as valuable and as important as any other teacher's grade across the nation. I do not want you to give pass-fail grades. Actually, when you're calculating a GPA at some colleges, they'll say if you got a pass grade, they give you a 2.0 when they're calculating that GPA. So don't do that, okay? Your grades are real. They really matter, and I'm on your side, okay? All right, well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and you take care of yourself and have fun calculating that GPA. Take care.